Oh boy. Venom, Let There Be Carnage is directed by Andy Serkis, starring Tom Hardy, Woody Harrelson, Michelle Williams, and Naomi Harris as Shriek. And this time around, a couple years after the events of the first Venom, Eddie Brock is starting to become a little bit more assimilated with the symbiote, although there's obviously some tension between the two, is covering the story of a serial killer named Cletus Cassidy, who's desperate to get his story out to the public and is trying to find a way to reunite with his former love interest, played by Naomi Harris, who's locked up in an asylum called Ravencroft. And unfortunately, certain things happen where a part of the symbiote from Eddie gets onto Cletus Cassidy, and he turns into the even more crazier version of Venom that we all know as Carnage. And therefore, we have our movie. If you saw my review of the first Venom, I didn't really care for it. I thought it was a huge letdown and a big missed opportunity and more or less a Sony product. I figured that's what was going to be the case with the sequel. I didn't really expect much else from it. I just thought it would be, you know, a harmless, kind of fun adventure. For the most part, I think it served its purpose, although I think it's much better than the first one, mostly because I think Andy Serkis behind the camera brings actually a really decent sense of energy to this one. Serkis, who's known for motion capture work like Planet of the Apes, Lord of the Rings, or Supreme Leader Snoke in the sequel trilogy, he does actually quite well of showcasing all the digital effects mixing with practical effects as well. And I thought the Venom effects looked a lot better in this one than the previous film. Mostly I think it's because the lighting was better, and Carnage is not only black but also red, so I think that kind of added more flavor to it. And the action scenes are not quite as memorable, albeit more enjoyable than the final fight between Venom and Riot at the climax of the first one. Woody Harrelson as Cletus Cassidy, inspired casting choice. Menacing, creepy, in all the right ways. Every time he was on screen, he commanded my attention. Harrelson is one of those actors similar to Willem Dafoe or Angelica Houston where he just looks scary. If I saw him standing at the foot of my bed with the look he has on his face throughout this movie, I would probably wet the bed. And when he turns into Carnage, it's all good fun, although I think that they could have made his voice a lot more high-pitched. It sounds more or less like the actual Venom voice. It's a nitpick, but hearing Carnage's voice in other iterations of the character, it has a purpose because Cletus Cassidy is a serial killer, and serial killers tend to be deranged psychotics. Hence why Carnage is even more dangerous than Venom and more scarier. I know it's just a voice, but still, I would have liked it a little bit higher than it was in the final product. As for Shriek, played by Naomi Harris, she's fine in the role. Unfortunately, we don't really get a lot of backstory with her. We do get a little bit of exposition from Cletus as he's telling Eddie about his childhood through a drawing of some kind, pushed his grandma down the stairs, killed his mother, and used a drill on his dog. Okay, moving on. How they eventually meet at this broken children's home or something, and he's desperate to get back together with her. We also see a little bit of that in the opening scene of a flashback where she's taken away from Ravencroft, wherever they were being held, and she uses her powers as like a high-pitched scream like Banshee in X-Men First Class in order to make her escape, and causing permanent hearing damage on that one officer who later turns out to be the detective that keeps hassling Eddie Brock, played by the same actor who was Mike Raney in the Band of Brothers series and also in the film Snatch with Jason Statham. Like dogs? Dogs? Oh, dogs. Yeah, sure. But as far as what her motivations are, we don't really get a good sense of it and why she does what she does. And that's another big problem with this movie. It feels very condensed to the point where it almost feels too short, like they breeze through certain things, that I wish we had a little more time to flesh out certain aspects, like the stuff with Shriek, and maybe more with Cletus Cassidy. It almost feels like in some ways a race to the finish line, kind of like the 2015 Fantastic Four, although not nearly as bad as that piece of garbage. This movie is considerably better, and light years and eons better than that. Last time I'm going to talk about that movie. No promises. In any case, I think they could have stretched out this film a bit more than they did. But what I do like is the dynamic between Venom and Eddie. It almost seems like a very codependent, abusive relationship in some ways. The voice of Venom keeps screaming in Eddie Brock's head, trying to get him to do certain things, and Eddie's trying really hard to fight back against it, such as the scene where he walks into Mrs. Chen's convenience store. Good evening, Venom. Mrs. Chen! He says hi.
What's gonna happen?
You gonna stop protecting me?
I am happy to eat, Mrs. Chen.
No, you cannot eat, Mrs. Chen.
What?
Nothing?
By the way, the Venom voice sometimes it's so garbled that I can't fully understand it. Even more so than Tom Hardy's Bane voice in Dark Knight Rises. It even has some surprisingly humorous moments too, and the humor, for the most part, is fine. And in a way, it's kind of sad to see Venom being shoved to the side by Eddie, because they clearly have some kind of undeniable care for each other. Not exactly a romantic kind of thing, although they do joke about it at the end of the movie. It's almost like a disgruntled owner of a newborn pup who can't really control himself too good. Michelle Williams returns once again in the film, doesn't really have much screen time. She's engaged to that guy Dan that she was dating, who actually does end up serving a purpose by throwing fire on the Carnage symbiote. So I guess there was something there, but that's really it. There's not much else to the relationship other than what we see. But I didn't expect much else to come out, so I wasn't disappointed. The rave scene, that felt so out of place and unnecessary. It took me out of the movie. Didn't need to be there. Venom is supposed to be an anti-hero of sorts in the comics. I haven't really read much of Venom comics, so don't shoot me. I don't claim to be an expert. I do know enough, though, from seeing other iterations of Spider-Man to know what Venom's all about. So I feel like there could have been some more emotional weight to it, more torment that Eddie feels, having to let this big monster take him over and not want to do all the things that Venom wants to do. But for the most part, they played up for comedic purposes, similar to the MCU, although the MCU, I think, does it miles better. This one, it's fine, and I think that's what the intention is of this movie. And if you're a fan of that kind of film, you're gonna have a great time. If you want more out of a Venom movie, you're gonna hate this one, or not be a big fan. I'm not a huge fan of the character, as I said, and I didn't expect much else out of this, so I wasn't really that disappointed. But I do think it's an improvement over the first one. So after Venom bites off Cletus's head and gets that one F-bomb they throw in there, they both go on the run and hide out in this remote area somewhere across the globe. And then we get a mid-credit scene which has some pretty big ramifications for future movies. And a lot of people are gonna be talking about that. And I think that this is gonna overshadow the rest of the movie. But I kinda don't really care, because what we get, Eddie and Venom are laying in this hotel room somewhere. Venom's about to tell him certain secrets about the universe, and all of a sudden this blinding light shows up and it transports the two of them into a hotel room with a TV on, where we see Jonah Jameson, played by J.K. Simmons, from Far From Home, revealing that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, played by Tom Holland himself. I heard all kinds of rumblings that there was a mid-credits or post-credit scene that was gonna make everybody explode. I figured that they're gonna tie this into the Tom Holland Spider-Man, aren't they? In a way, I wasn't surprised, but the way they introduced it by having him warped into another dimension, that's what got me. And seeing Tom Holland on the TV, I was kind of hoping that maybe there would be something else, but it still shocked me. And I think that was the effect of Doctor Strange's spell that we see in the No Way Home trailer, that he brought other characters from other universes. They're obviously setting up for No Way Home and tying this in. We didn't think this was possible about 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, but now it's actually happening. Could this mean that Venom is gonna be the 6th villain in No Way Home, therefore making it a Sinister Six movie, along with the other multiverse, Spider-Verse stuff that's heavily rumored to be the case in that one? I'd be very surprised if they didn't do that. So if anything, stick around for the mid-credits scene. It is going to blow your mind. Those are my thoughts on Venom, Let There Be Carnage. What are your guys' thoughts on the movie, and what do you think of the post-credits scene? Are you excited to see where it could go, or are you not really jazzed about it? Whatever your thoughts are, comment below and tell me, and I'll see you guys in the next video.